Welcome to Protein Synthesis Part 4, Mutations. Not like X-Men, however that would be really cool. We're going to be talking about some natural, some unnatural mutations of our DNA. So how our DNA changes and how that change in form changes the function of our proteins. So like I said, there's some natural and unnatural mutations. Natural mutations give us things like different skin color, different hair color, which are fine and don't actually cause any harm. However, there are some mutations that are damaging. For example, mutation can occur from UV light, from sun hitting us too regularly. It might damage the DNA and lead to skin cancer. Cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes can cause, is a mutagen. So mutagen is something that generates a mutation. So cigarettes can cause mutations in the lungs, in the larynx, in the throat, in the mouth, in the bladder, all over the place. So it affects the DNA inside of cells. And then man-made substances, pesticides, herbicides, chemicals are mutagens as well. So they cause mutations in organisms. So here our frog unfortunately was exposed to too much herbicide and had a mutation and gained a few legs. So we're going to be looking at the codon chart again, and it's really important to think about this and use the codon chart here because 3 nucleotides equal 1 amino acid. And sometimes if we change a letter in that 3-letter sequence, like if we went from UUU to UCU, you'd end up with a new amino acid. However, if we have that C somewhere else, so UUC, we still have PHE. So there are 2 major types of mutations. The first one we're going to talk about is a point mutation, which just means that a single nucleotide is changed in a sequence. And then this can have drastic differences in impact. So if we see here, we've got our initial mRNA sequence, our initial protein. This is what it should look like. However, there can be a couple different kinds of mutations down below. So the first point mutation, where just a single letter is changed, is called a silent mutation. So a U instead of a C is put in this spot, but it's called silent because the protein sequence does not change. There's no impact. It's okay. The second kind is missense, as in mistake, and a mistake was made. So an A is here instead of a G. And that's just one letter, one nucleotide, but it gives you a different amino acid. This could be the difference between having normal red blood cells that flow around in your body nicely and having sickle cell anemia, which has all kinds of debilitating impacts. And the third kind of point mutation is nonsense. It tells the body to stop making the protein. A U instead of an A there says stop. So it's nonsensical. If a nonsense point mutation occurs, one letter changes and it makes the whole thing stop. So we can't make proteins. The other type of mutation is a reading frame mutation. So this is either adding or deleting nucleotides that change the way things are read in the sequence. So let's say you were trying to say the big tan dog ran, and you insert an extra letter. You'd have the boy GTA endogran. So it doesn't make sense anymore. Or if you deleted a letter from the big tan dog ran, it would be the bijte and ogron, which also doesn't make any sense. So it changes the way the sentence is read. So this can happen in a few ways. If you remove a letter, that can change not just 1 but 2 amino acids because it changes the whole sequence. It shifts the frame. Another kind is you add an extra letter and it can be nonsense again. So nonsense meaning it just tells it to stop. Or instead of just adding 1 or 2, it can actually add 3 nucleotides, which is a whole new codon. So instead of saying the big dog ran, it would be the big tan dog ran. And this is important to remember because form, so the way something is, especially for our proteins, affects its function. For example, if you know anyone who's lactose intolerant, that means that they don't have an enzyme. Their body, their DNA, is not able to make a certain enzyme that breaks down the sugar in milk. Point mutations and reading frame mutations have different impacts depending on where that mutation occurs. So what type of cell is impacted by that mutation? So in our bodies, we have two different types of cells. We have somatic cells, which are body cells, skin cells, liver, eyeballs, all the cells that we use in most of our daily lives. So teeth, liver, bones, etc. Gametes are the sex cells. So that's egg and sperm. This is where the DNA that gets passed on to your kids is stored. So if there was a mutation in one of these two, which do you think would have longer impacts? If you guessed gametes, you would be correct. So germline is another way to say gametes. So when the sperm meets the egg, if there's a mutation, see here in the sperm, that could affect the embryo, that individual, and then also they could pass that mutation on to future generations. However, if the mutation happens in a somatic cell, so a cell in the body like a skin cell, then the gametes are not affected. The individual is okay. There might be a part of that individual that's affected, but it does not get passed on from generation to generation.